You are now in the queue. 35,365 people ahead of you. It's not happening, is it? Forget that anyway. Good job you lot are here. The Vuelta A Espana, what a week it's been. And on this week's Gruppetto, we will also meet Carmen, sports director from EF Oatly, who has plenty to say on where cycling's come from, where it is and where it's going. But we're going away from the ticket queues and to week 2 of the Vuelta.
The Vuelta said hello to week 2, and for those wanting a change from the extreme heat of the south, it was good to be back in the cooler northwest. 3 minutes and 53 seconds was Ben O'Connor's advantage as he continued to lead the Vuelta on a one-way road around Galicia to Bayona. With the rest of the leaders well protected behind, Wout van Aert was feeling that it was good to be free of the shackles of teamwork, managing to slide away into another breakaway. The Belgian is a force of nature in these situations, and as his companions could do nothing but fade away from his wheel, he beat Quentin Paché in a two-up sprint to a third win at this race. There was early drama on a fraught stage 11. With a big group up the road, Decathlon were keen to shut things down. The rest of the teams had failed to listen up, but anyone else who tried to get in the move was going nowhere. Among all the noise and confusion, Richard Carapaz hit the deck and wouldn't quite be crying his heart out at what he thought caused it, but definitely complained. Maybe he was right. Whatever, the race would move on. The stage was won by Eddie Dunbar, who scored his first #1 in a Grand Tour. Behind that superb victory for the Irishman, little by little, Roglic and the rest were continuing to chip away at the red jersey's lead. Just over 30 seconds gone, with the Slovenian making the difference by the finish line in Padron. Another day, another tough route, and another breakaway win. This time there were no changes at the top of the GC, but there was an emotional finish at the Manzaneda ski resort. Just hours after team president Manolo Ascona had passed away, Ken Farmer took their first ever stage win at their home Grand Tour. The young man to deliver it was Pablo Castrillo, showing he had the heart of a star to hang on with bigger names chasing. The 23-year-old climber from Aragon marking his 3-week race debut with a ride that also served as his maiden pro win. Unknown to most before this Vuelta, now familiar to millions. Stage 13 took the peloton to the much-feared Puerto de Ancares, and along the way there was another breakaway list of riders, longer than the queue for tickets to see you-know-who. Michael Woods won the battle for the stage ahead of Mauro Schmidt and the ever-present Max Soler, but the headlines came 10 minutes after the winner had crossed the line, when it was starting to seem like O'Connor's lead wouldn't live forever. A quick peep of what was to come again at the weekend, ramps well up into double-digit percentages, and seeing Roglic take almost 2 minutes back, but this time also put distance between himself and other contenders, most notably Enric Mas. 1 minute and 21 seconds now the distance between the red jersey from Down Under and Rog, the 3-time winner. While half the world was away as part of the queue on Saturday, the Vuelta provided a stage perfect for that rocking chair siesta, or just to keep pressing refresh. The race was well controlled, a bit of waiting, but no dynamic pricing anyone out of the game here. Despite the main GC squads deciding that there was nothing worth working for on the climbs, the last few kilometres downhill to the finish were supersonic. Yes, you knew I was going to get that one in, didn't you? A bunch sprint at the end of a mountain stage, the Vuelta out-Vueltering itself, and this time Van Aert failed to roll with Caden Groves, who crossed the white line first, came out on top and made it happen for the second time at this race. The Sunday morning call time was slightly earlier. A big stage in the mountains was ahead as week 2 came to a full-on close with the first visit to Quito Negro for over a decade. The peloton would soldier on, fighting for the first few climbs, as a break took its time to get the gap. The chance of another stage for those out front faded in and out all day long, with anything still possible, as onlookers wondered what would happen on the final wall-like climb. Despite the gloomy atmosphere, there wasn't quite the forecast cloudburst. But underneath the sky of a cloudy, misty Asturias, the Vuelta again dug out its greatest hits. Pavel Sivakov and Alexander Vlasov were at the front with that man Castrillo once more. Despite looking like he was struggling, there would be another bottle of winning champagne for Castrillo. And if the rumours around him definitely maybe signing for a top World Tour team are true, they'll be hoping that the young star hasn't quite reached the supernova stage just yet. For the GC riders, it was legs against mountain, grit versus gradient, and put your money where your mouth is time. Roglic's initial acceleration and gap looked good. At that point, some might have said the race was already over. But back came Mas, and crucially, O'Connor continued to fight a little further back to prevent himself falling down the standings. On the road, emerging out of the mist with a 38-second advantage on the overall leader, Mas and Roglic crossed the line together. That meant that the Australian had held on to the red jersey with 6 stages still to go. A week away from stopping the clocks in Madrid, however, Roglic was given a 20-second time penalty for drafting behind a team car after a planned bike change before the final climb. Maybe a time to insert a comment about not looking back in anger here. So there they were, now here they are. Plenty of confusion, but nothing's ever the same at this Vuelta a Espana. With Ben O'Connor taking a lead, albeit just by 1 minute and 3 seconds ahead of Primož Roglic into week 2 of the race, Enric Mas is in third at 2:23. Playing the B-side this week to the Vuelta was the Renewi Tour. A chance for the Classics riders to go let it out on the roads of the Benelux, and another Tim Wellens master plan was written. Jonathan Milan took the first and third verses, with a TT stage win chorus sung loud and proud by Alex Segaert on day 2. That gave him the race lead. Any hopes of unseating him on stage 4 were probably all in the mind, as it ended with sprint success for Jasper Philipsen. But Segaert will have been asking, where did it all go wrong on the final stage? The answer lay not in the looking glass, but more appropriately for cycling, on the Mur in Gerardsbergen, where he almost lost a minute to Wellens, and better man on the day, stage winner Arnaud Delis. Tim Wellens getting his Renewi Tour band back together for a 4th overall win.
So how did we do? Let us know in the comments before, but I think I can hear the groans from here. Let's move on, shall we? Back to serious stuff, because Carmen Small was a superb bike rider, national champion on the bike, director of national champions, now off it as a sports director at EF Education, Oatley. I met her last week and she had plenty to say. Carmen Small, thank you for joining us on the Gruppetto. Pleasure to have you on, a delight to have you on. Just over a week after the Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift, and I'm sure what was an amazing adventure. First of all, have you had a chance to decompress and recover?
Yeah, just a few days ago, so I was sleeping well, let's say that.
Well, for those who don't know you, you are a former 2-time national time trial champion. You've been on the podium at the Worlds, a top rider in the Classics as well. But a few years ago, you swapped the bike for the car. You're now one of the top DSs. How's that career been so far? Because I know you've been in 2 or 3 different teams. You're currently with EF.
Yep. So I started out like in the same season. I suffered a concussion and wasn't able to come back. And in that season, I became a director. Kind of a shock. And like I wasn't expecting that to happen so quickly. But it worked out. And then I was on Virtue until they closed the team. And moved to a few teams. And then, so I was on Jumbo last year, and then they made the new EF team. And I moved with Ezra there. So, yeah.
You're very happy then, I guess, at EF, because it's a completely new setup, isn't it? I know there used to be an EF team, but this is a completely new setup.
Yeah, exactly. So it was Tibco before. So I actually raced for Tibco as a rider. But this is an absolutely new team. It's a part of the men's EF team. So that's, it's really brilliant because they have all the infrastructure and everything is pretty set up. So we were able to come in and really integrate easily. Yeah, super happy there. I have fellow Americans also, which is nice. It's new for me. I've always been the foreign one on the teams. But we're well-rounded. It's very international. And yeah, we have a really close like women's group that we work with. So that's also really nice.
So how's the season gone so far then for EF?
Yeah, I don't think we can complain. I'm not sure how many wins, but quite a few. Um, I think we've basically checked off almost all of our goals that we had for the season, which we had the riders set themselves. So that was pretty exciting. And at first we were like, these are pretty lofty goals, but let's go for it. And so it's been a really nice first year. I think no one really expected such great results from us. And I think my favorite thing is that we won with so many different riders.
I mean, you talk about the success now, the goals, but that only breeds wanting to set higher goals for next year, doesn't it? And I guess that with transfer season in full swing and all that sort of stuff, that's sort of in play now, is it? Right now we're speaking what, 22nd of August?
Yeah, I'm kind of out of the loop completely on that one. But I think we're almost finished with our roster for next year, which is nice. We don't have so many girls doing like any turnover because we had a lot of long-term contracts, which is good. But so we definitely keep like that core group together. And yeah, we look forward to next year for sure.
So in terms of the transfers, because I mean, it's always an interesting thing. I find that cycling transfers happen sort of away from the gaze of the public, and not many people know what's happening. It's not like when you sort of log onto the soccer websites, the football, and you say, "Oh, such and such is in talks with this team." It doesn't seem to happen as openly in cycling. So, in terms of what you've experienced in your career as both rider and DS, I imagine it's changing at quite a pace. I think across the sport it's changing across the pace. We seem to have more movement between teams now. Is that just generally the thing of agents and general managers, or do you DSs have an input as well into who you might like to come and ride?
Yeah, definitely we give a lot of input. And because we're at the race, so we see a lot going on, I guess. So I think it's pretty valuable to the manager. I'm more than happy not to deal with it, to be honest. On Virtue, I did, and I didn't love like signing contracts and negotiating. Um, so it's really nice that I really have nothing to do with the contracts. And we leave that up to Ezra. And I think now dealing with all the managers, this is a big change in women's cycling. I think if you don't have a manager, I think there's more girls with managers than without at this point, at the World Tour level, which is good. I mean, I think that it's also a necessary thing. Everything has come pretty fast in the last 3 years for the women, some good and some bad, but I think the manager thing was just waiting to happen. So I'm glad I don't have to deal with managers and signing contracts, though.
You talk about the pace of change. That's one thing that I wanted to get in with you, because as both rider and DS, you've been in the sport at the biggest pace of change. I would say not just on the women's side, but the men's side as well. Things in terms of training programs have changed exponentially. But on the women's side, the audience, the standard of racing, the economic, recompense, the wages have gone up absolutely as they should have, and perhaps they should be rising more as well. What have you seen this sort of period of change in cycling? How have you experienced it? Because you must have seen so many things change.
Yeah, we were just talking about it at the tour last week that like when we started Virtue, it was like we came to a race with 2 cars, a truck, and a camper, and that was a lot of staff and a lot of people around. I mean, we can remember doing Grand Tours. Well, they weren't Grand Tours back then, but the Giro was 10 days, and sometimes we came with one director, one mechanic, and 2 soigneurs. And we managed, I don't know how, but we managed. Some of the racing wasn't as long, that's true. And but now, okay, it's better, it's growing in a positive way. Like all the internal infrastructure stuff is definitely improving women's cycling. I mean, we need to grow to a professional level, so that also takes people. But it has changed really fast in the last, I would say 5 years. It's crazy how much it's really grown. And some a little bit too quick for for us actually.
What things have grown too quickly, do you think then?
I think that we can't underestimate the smaller teams and their value to the sport. And so it seems like everyone, oh, we want to be World Tour, we want to be World Tour, which is great, but we still need the smaller teams because we don't have an infrastructure like the men do with the junior programs and the U23. So we can't really neglect those programs and then just grow on the top end. So everyone wants to be World Tour, everyone wants to have the best team, which is great. But not every team needs to do it. So I think that's one thing that we can't forget is, are these smaller teams or the development teams? How are we going to develop the riders in cycling so they're not just like coming, getting their ass kicked, and then leaving the sport? So, there's still some missing pieces to the puzzle for sure.
What other pieces do you think then should come? What sort of change should we be looking to implement in the next, let's say, 2 to 3 seasons?
Ask the UCI.
I mean, they
Yeah,
don't always listen, but let's hope they've got their ears open now.
Yeah, so I think that for sure we need to keep on pushing the younger teams, the development teams. I mean, that can't be neglected. But also with the races, I think also with the smaller races, like not allowing World Tour teams to come to some 0.2s, 0.1s, maybe even, and maybe they just get to come to the pro races because they need to race and they need to race at their own level and win. Because if you don't learn how to win at the lower races, then you never can really learn how to win at the bigger races. So I think that they are re-implementing, I think, the 0.1 rule where they limit World Tour teams to come, which I think is a really positive thing. But I think they need to do it more and maybe limit the amount of World Tour teams at this point, because it really needs to be like done well and right and have enough funding to really do it right on a high level and not just have 18 riders and maybe 6 of those riders really don't belong. Like this needs there needs to be a little bit more balance with the whole thing.
In terms of the races, the Tour's arrived now. We've got a Vuelta. The Giro's always been there, but obviously there's always been this problem of organisation. Is it going to be on the telly? Things like that. It seems like it was better this year from the outside looking in. Again, I was working on the Tour de France, so I can't comment on how it might have been. In terms of the 3 big races, do we want more days? Do we want them to stay as they are? What do we want from those 3 big races going forward?
I think that the visibility now is really good. Like you can basically watch it somewhere. But I do think we need more days. Like, to be honest, it's weird to call it a grand tour. I almost don't like to, because it's not. I mean, I go to Ardèche in 2 weeks and it's 6 or 7 days. So why is this, or like CMAC Tour? It's actually the same length as the tour, but we're not calling CMAC a grand tour. So to me, that's a little bit strange. I would like to see it to be like 10 to 12 days. I think we don't need more. Because
you don't want a 3-week grand tour then?
We don't need it. We definitely don't need it. We don't need, I mean, also because we don't have the capabilities to do that right now. You have to have a lot of staff. You have to have more cars. I mean, there's a lot more than just saying, oh, let's go race for 3 weeks. It's a lot of things behind the scenes. So I think if we start out like we had the Giro 10 days, I think it was great. Maybe 10 to 12 day races. I think this will, push the girls in a positive way, but not overdo it for where we're at right now.
I know you're working with the men's team as well, and a lot of teams who now have both a women's and a men's section are sort of pooling their sports directors. I guess that's a positive thing for both the teams, because they're not employing a million extra people, but also for you as well, to spread learnings, to get to know different riders, for new challenges. You're off to the Vuelta. I mean, the Vuelta first week's been a challenging watch at times with the heat and the slow days. Would you keep those races at 3 weeks?
I can't talk with the men. I can't talk about the men's stuff. I'm not in it so much. I will just go help out. Like I helped out earlier in the season with a few races, but if the guys ask me to come, I'm more than happy to do it, because I can always learn something. And just have whether it's learning something or just having a new experience, I think is very valuable. men's and women's cycling is very, very different sports, in my opinion. Now going with the men and seeing how different it is, now I really know it's a different sport. Not in a negative.
What are the big
positive
differences?
way. Yeah, I mean, I was really shocked about just the speed, actually. That was a big, because I was driving the car. So I was like, wow, you drive the car. And sometimes in women's cycling, it's yeah. You go a lot slow. I mean, 5K an hour, let's say in the peloton, that is like 7K in the convoy. So it's quite a bit different. Like you're driving instead of 30, 40K an hour, sometimes 50, 60K an hour. So you're really driving. So that was a big difference for me. Also, the amount of bottles they consume is quite a lot.
Yeah.
I was definitely shocked on this part, like really shocked. And my arm was definitely sore and injured at the end of Catalonia. But
There was no gym required for a little while then.
yeah, I was like, can you tape my arm or something? Because I'm not going to survive again. Can I please go in the second car? But yeah, it's just different, and just so the speed, but also the tactics are different. I mean, women's racing, you still like have a lot of things that are unpredictable. Maybe because it's a new course. I mean, now they're adding these really long climbs to our races. That we really didn't have in the past. So we don't have any precedents. Even kind of, we can even put in Roubaix into that category. We have no precedents for Roubaix still. I mean, we need a few more years to like understand really what will happen in the women's races, which makes it exciting because you really don't.
As a
You know,
spectator, I absolutely love that. It's something completely different to watch at the moment.
yeah, it's very exciting racing. But even like I had Juanma from our men's team come and join us for the Vuelta for a few days, but he also was like, the way they even move in the peloton is so different. The way they are interacting with the cars are different. I mean, there's a lot of differences, and some make sense because as a whole, like we're pretty far behind men's cycling. I mean, our professional girls at the top end are quite professional, but I want to say like we have a bigger difference between the best girl and maybe the worst in a world tour race versus the men, which is pretty condensed into all of them kind of know what it should be going on.
That's just time at the top, though, isn't it? And the money to filter down, and more people to join the sport. I mean, that's no sort of illustration on ability or anything. That's just time and foundation and things needed to run their course.
Exactly, and just like what I said before is like you don't have enough girls to even fill in a full women's world tour roster in a really high level. So this is normal. We need the development teams. We really need to have like the junior teams and the U23 teams to jump in and operate at a higher level to then go into the world tour teams.
Now, one of your big successes this season, I think, was national championships, wasn't it? As DS, you went back and you were in charge of several winning jerseys. I mean, the big name, because of what she's gone on to do then in Paris, Kristen Faulkner. What is she like? Because she's gone from being a very solid rider to an absolute global superstar now.
Yeah, Kristen is definitely a bright star. I mean, I think that she has a lot of special abilities that are underestimated sometimes, but her drive and desire to win is just as good as anyone else's in the peloton. So you put that in with the combination of like physically able to do it. It's a pretty deadly combination, I think. So yeah, with nationals, it was good. I mean, it was really sad that she didn't win the TT, of course, that we wanted. That was kind of what we were aiming for. But it was good to see her professionalism to get back and do the road race and give it a go and to win. And then, full focus on the team pursuit. So I really at the Olympics, it was quite a bonus that she did the road race because that was definitely not in the cards. You know, in my opinion, I always looked at that course and said, oh, this is a course for Kristen. I think I even told USA Cycling, like, yeah, it's kind of unfortunate that she isn't going to race it because I think she can win.
Wow.
But you know, this is how cycling goes. So then it was kind of a gift that she was able to then race it in the end, I think. But she worked really, really hard, and she was fully committed to that team pursuit. I have to say that, like, definitely she put that as priority for training and preparation. So
What an absolute superstar. I mean, just getting through those final kilometers as well, and she was still sort of the other one in that group, wasn't she, in the road race there, you know, just given the names that were there. But I guess that's going to change going forward next year though, and people are going to be more wary of you, and you might have to come up with different plans in the car to help her win races next year, because people will certainly be watching her closer.
yeah, I was actually surprised, but I think they were so tired by the end that they couldn't actually follow, because girls know who Kristen is, and they know that they cannot let her. It's just like a Grace Brown or an Ellen Van Dyke. You can't give them Marlene Royce, or there's certain girls in the peloton that you know you can't give them an inch because you're not going to see them again. And so I think, like, for me, watching the race on the outside, Kristen was for sure the strongest that day. And so it was nice to see it play out, because sometimes that doesn't happen. So it was good. She's super savvy on the bike as well, so she knows race tactics. She knew when she needed to attack, and it would look like a brutal day on the bike. So I think everyone was pretty on their limit. So, but I don't think it's going to change our tactics anymore than before. I mean, of course, they're not just going to let her go, but I don't think that was the case in the first place. So she just needs hard bike racing to shine.
Well, let's hope there's more hard bike racing next year for Faulkner, for EF, and for you in the car. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Carmen. Thanks very much for your time, and we hope you come back and explain how things are going next season for us.
Yeah, I would love it.
Superb to hear from Carmen Small there, from all the insight into the peloton and the goings on. If you've any comment on anything she said, you'd like to add to the discussion, make sure you post below in the comments, or if you're looking at any of these videos on our Instagram channel, make sure you comment below and share it with your mates. Subscribe and share too. The more viewers we get, the more content we'll be able to bring you. Okay, we're moving on. The Vuelta's final week, and you'll be able to watch it as usual, of course, on the home of cycling, Eurosport and Discovery Plus. I'm sheltering in Gijón, where the race is going to pass through on its next stage at the start of week 3. It's raining outside, and if this weather continues over the final week, as well as the many thousand meters of climbing and big mountains to take on, it's going to be quite the week, isn't it? Can Primož Roglič overhaul Ben O'Connor? You'll also be able to watch the Tour of Britain this week as we continue to build up to the World Championships that will take place in Zurich as well. As you can see, all of that live and on demand on Discovery Plus and on Eurosport. And too, don't forget, we've got the short highlights of the big races every day on our Eurosport Cycling YouTube channel as well. Well, as I said, I'm in Asturias. I'm going to be joining the cycling podcast for the next week to talk you through the rest of the Vuelta A Espana. I'll also be coming back next week on the Gruppetto to bring you a few inside bits. We'll see who we can chat to along the way to Madrid as well. And also, with all the climbs coming up, time to check on how we're going. Front the queue yet? Oh, here we go. Here we go. How much? I think I'll stick to the Vuelta, don't you? See you next week. Goodbye.